why not sit back, relax, and take things easy like a Sunday morn? I'm your host, Shane Lockwood, and this is episode 77. Today is the 2nd of April here in Australia, which means it's the 1st of April in the United States. So I hope that a few of you haven't been fooled and tricked by the April Fool's japery that went on. There hasn't been a lot of jokes and things. There's been a few, but I think we live in a world where we're pretty much post-satire and things are pretty bad to the point where if you make a joke, there's a good chance that that now becomes your reality. It's like, how bad can it get? You know, you can't make jokes anymore because it's like the situation is actually worse than the joke itself. But the purpose of this particular podcast is to let go of all of that nonsense, all the drama and so on and so forth, and just bring things back to your life to give you back control. There's a whole heap of things going on in the world that you cannot control. So we're going to let go of those things and bring it back to what you can control. So hopefully you may have a beverage and of your choice, and you are sitting down comfortably, or if you're trying to get some sleep, then, and please do use this podcast for that. I don't mind if the sound of my voice tends to help people to sleep and things like that. So just close your eyes and focus on your breathing. Slow your breathing down. Don't have to worry about what you're going to do for tomorrow or anything like that. Just slow things down. Just breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. Okay, what I'm going to do before we get too involved with the podcast is say a thank you and a rest in peace to a good friend of mine by the name of Judy Gowland. Now, for those of you who have been following the podcast for a while, you will know that I was not only a client of, but I actually volunteer in or with soup kitchens. And one of those soup kitchens, it's only the one soup kitchen, it's called Fred's Van. And they're no longer out of a van, they're actually indoors now. So Judy was instrumental in starting Fred's Van and running Fred's Van, and also pushing to get Fred's Van inside the 1225 radio station place. So they've got a hall that they can set up tables and chairs, and people can come and have meals and things like that for free if they feel the need to do so. And there's all sorts of things for homeless people and stuff like that. So I started volunteering a good couple of years ago, and that was part and parcel by, like, influenced by Judy. And it turns out that she was the one I was getting the La Femme Nikita DVDs for. If you remember, I mentioned her last year when I went to Queensland, and she had been diagnosed with cancer, inoperable cancer, and she'd been told by the doctors that she had 2 to 3 years to live, and she said she was going to go through chemo and that she was going to fight it with everything she had, and so on and so forth. So that was pretty awesome. She rang me while I was in transit to Queensland, wanting to know if I wanted the La Femme Nikita DVDs box sets back. And I said, I'm in transit now, and when I get back, I'll sort something out. So she had said that because she was worried about mobile phones making the cancer worse, which is not true, they don't have an effect at all. She didn't want to be on her mobile phone for too long and all that sort of stuff. So I didn't have a chance to actually ring her and organise the picking up of it and whatnot. And then she passed away, and I didn't know. I wasn't notified either. Every time I went to volunteer, I said I would ask, "Oh, have you spoken to Judy?" Yep, she's doing all right. She's going to fight it, and all this sort of stuff. And that's great. And then the next month I'd ask, and yep, I haven't heard from her for a while, but she's doing okay. Okay, great. And then the next time I went to ask, and this is months apart, right? So the next time I went to ask, the woman that was ringing her and volunteering in her spot, she was silent and just mumbled something. Oh, she's okay. And I thought, no, there's something wrong there. Anyway, the next month there is a notification on the door, the funeral, little cards that you get with some funeral parlours that have the things for the family and the birth, the death, and who they're grateful for and their religious ideas and stuff like that. So I see this with Judy's name on it, and I thought, nobody told me. She didn't invite, nobody invited me to her funeral and all this sort of stuff, right? So I didn't know. Speaking of which, like, Judy had actually bought me a couple of Hungry Jack's Whoppers, like a Whopper from Burger King. Look, Hungry Jack's is the Australian equivalent of Burger King. Pretty much just the same restaurant, but just a name change. She bought me a couple of Whoppers when we went to Jeff's funeral. And, things like that. It's just little memories. She was always bright and positive and encouraging me to do different things, to go to university, which I did, and I graduated, and never to give up and things like that. So she was an absolutely fantastic person. So she's worthy of, like a good 5-6 minutes worth of eulogy. Before I move on, actually I am going to move on. So rest in peace, Judy. If there is an afterlife, and I'm not one to advocate that sort of thing. I once believed in that sort of stuff, but I don't anymore. But if there is, and you're listening, please increase the download numbers. No, I'm just kidding. Just watch over everybody and bring in some blessings and all that sort of stuff. The previous episode was back at the end of, I think it was in February, and it's called Where Did January Go? And there's been a couple of months between episodes, and I thought what I would do is just talk very briefly about what's going on in my life. And wow, my year pretty much hasn't started properly until, I reckon it won't start properly until Friday. On Thursday, I've got a housing trust inspection. I was scheduled to have one before, but the housing manager actually rang in sick. So I hope, fingers crossed, that she doesn't ring in sick this time, and that it all goes ahead and it's all smooth and it goes very quickly. In the meantime, actually on the same day, I got a phone call saying, did you want to come in and do an induction for a job site and then start work on the Friday? So I've started working, and there's something called being institutionalized, and it's something that happens if you're on welfare for a while. Now in America, there is a bit of a cutoff, so you're not on welfare for all that long. And I think in America there's a lot more opportunities. Now in Australia, you could be perpetually on welfare, and it's not a good state to be in. It's not something that I endorse. But when there's very little option, and when the people at the bigger end of town are selling off assets and making it harder for people to actually get work, then I can fully understand. So I've started doing construction cleaning. It was a similar sort of job that I was doing last year at the RAF base. That was a bit of not really a top secret thing, or actually it was, but it wasn't top secret that I was working there. It was just top secret sections of it, so we couldn't actually like talk about it very much. And but now I'm in the city and just cleaning up the dust from the construction of the John Calvary Hospital. And I can reveal that because it's not a top secret thing at all. And so far I'm enjoying it. The new boss doesn't scream and yell and carry on. I had a rather abusive former employer. So thankfully this one's pretty good. I told him about the Housing Trust inspection on Thursday and he said, oh yeah, don't worry about it, come in Friday. I go, oh great, you know, like, because there's always people that will replace people, and then there's weekend work as well. And this brings me to the role of penalty rates and the fact that we actually do need penalty rates if you're going to be working on weekends, because you're sacrificing your time with your family and that rest and recovery time to stop your back from aching. And my back does ache a little bit sometimes. I also wanted to thank the Patreon supporters, and don't flinch, I'm not going to ask for more support in that area. I know that people have made all sorts of excuses and things like that, but I'm not going to push it, right? If it was $1 like an episode for extra bonus content, and I am working on smaller episodes. They're probably going to be, because of the way I present things and talk and things like that, there might be about 15 minutes or so, but they will be exclusive to the people who actually want to do the right thing and put some money towards what I'm doing. And hopefully it will, if this podcast grows, that means that I can do a lot more with it. It means I can stop doing what I'm doing for income. There's another job opportunity that I'm thinking of taking, or at least applying for, where I work in a call center, and it's less money per year, but it's consistent and it's a government job, and it might be my foot in the door to do all sorts of other things. But what I'm looking for is not necessarily more time to do the podcast. It's about mental focus. And if you've got a structure, you will find that you'll be able to do a whole lot more in your lunch break, for example. So if you know that you've got a 30-minute lunch break every day, you bring your lunch with you. You might spend, say, 2 or 3 minutes eating your lunch, but then you've got like 27 minutes to do whatever you want to do, plus maybe the time, a few minutes to go up and down steps from the lunchroom to back to your office and all that sort of stuff, right? So hopefully I'll be able to do a lot more podcast stuff. So in my lunch break, obviously, depending on where I am, some places have like air conditioning, really loud air conditioning, so it's really hard to actually record stuff like this. But what I will do, and what I have started doing and am doing, is writing little notes and little scripts and things like that. So I will be doing that sort of stuff. I'll be talking about really cool stuff like current events and stuff like that. But with this particular podcast, I want to avoid politics where possible. I made the mistake of mentioning a few things, and people like react badly, because the purpose of this podcast is not to annoy people. It's about getting people to relax and unwind and maybe have a beverage or two, sit back and just enjoy the fact that they're not at work. You know, if you're in your bed between your sheets, you're trying to just listen to the sound of my voice, just to slowly drift off and things like that. But Patreon exclusives, I'm going to be talking about No Man's Sky and the new update coming soon in the next few months. Now, they've revealed a few things, and I will go into that at some point with the Patreon exclusive episode, and that's something I'll talk about soon. And that's because they haven't actually revealed all of what's going to be in the update. So once they do that, then I can talk about it a little bit more. On a slightly related note, I started my first experience with virtual reality through the PlayStation 4. It is fantastic. And I shared a photo of Twitter. There's of a giant great white shark, and the experience is like first person, the shark swimming around you in a steel cage, and then it tears off the steel cage, and then it goes to attack you, and your heart's pounding, you're looking around, but I don't know, halfway through the experience I sort of felt bored. It was like, this is sort of boring and I don't really want to be here in this environment. But it really is amazing. You need a fair bit of space in the room that you are using virtual reality in. I keep bumping into the doors and my mattress because what I did in order to get enough room to move around, I have it at a 45-degree angle, and I just stand in my doorway. And because it's all based on the camera, there's a camera with the PlayStation 4 that detects your movement and things like that. So I've experienced the shark dive. There's like a gangster heist thing, a diamond heist. You rob a bank and steal a diamond, and there's gangsters fighting over who's going to take the diamond, and stuff like that. You end up killing one of the guys in the end, and it's quite interesting because it's like a 3D surround effect. It's very difficult to describe to those who don't produce mental images. It's called aphantasia, and it's, imagine being in a room but you're surrounded by computer generated imagery straight into your eyes and ears, and some of it's very cartoony because that's the nature of like games and things, but some of it can be quite real and quite convincing too. It's like quite really good. I think that 400 Australian dollars is probably a little bit too much to pay for a PlayStation helmet, and that does remind me I do need to pay a few people back, and I will do that once I get a little bit more confident with where my rent's going to be coming from and little things like that. But yeah, it's really good. Virtual reality, try it out. And a few friends of mine I'd found a virtual reality place in Adelaide, in the city, where they do virtual reality games and flight simulators. You can do like a 747 flight simulation, helicopter simulations, car racing simulations. There's all sorts of zombie killing games and multiplayer games and that sort of thing. So one night we're going to have like a bit of a games night to celebrate a friend's birthday. So that should be really, really cool. Also, before I go, I just wanted to say thank you to Melissa, my friend Melissa, just for saying that she found these podcasts fun, and that's really encouraging to me because sometimes you can lose sight of why you're doing like podcasting and things like that. It is about the audience, and it is about it's about getting stuff off your chest sometimes, and it's about producing the show that you want to produce. Very often you have to stop and be aware of what your listeners like and don't like, and then maybe tailor the show towards them rather than it's all about me and it's all about what I want to talk about. And it really is like a mixture of both. So if this has been a fun experience for you, Melissa, once again, to say thank you for that. And I do want to thank the Patreon supporters for their suggestions. And I will be doing shorter episodes, like I said, a little bit more focused on topic stuff. And I'll probably condense it down to like 15 minutes, and it'll probably be scripted and things like that. So I'm not going to be going and things like that. And they're my little trigger words, not trigger words. They're the words that you fall back on and you keep using over and over again when you don't have anything to say. And this has been all improv so far. I want to say thank you to Adam Kochi. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm going to stuff it up regardless, not on purpose, obviously, for his podcast, and little homages to mine. Like, I did notice little bits and pieces, so that's really cool. And I think also to the guys behind the Sizzletown podcast. I know that a few people listened to a certain point and then they stopped, but the show does keep getting better and better. And I do encourage people to listen to the show, but you have to, because there's a lot of swearing in the show, you have to be able to look past that and realize that this is the way people speak in everyday speech. And it's to highlight that some people are actually quite low class, and there are people that are, you know, obviously higher class, and I think Tony Martin tries to do like a subtle mix of everything, and they plan everything out, they script everything out, and you know, they spend forever on the background sound effects and things like that. So when you listen to it over and over again, you pick up little things, you pick up little suggestions of what's going to happen in the next episode and things like that. So that's really, really cool. I want to say thank you to the guys over at the Pod Socks podcast. Oh, by the way, Adam does this podcast called Podcaster Non Grata. That's where you'll find it. But then he's created another character called Gerald Twint, and he's basically a geriatric character. I want to thank the guys at Pod Socks for just letting me know that they do actually listen to the podcast. And I know I dribble on a bit and ramble on a bit. And also, it's sort of one of those things when people listen to a podcast and they say, oh, I only got a few episodes, or a TV show, and they only get a few episodes in, and then it doesn't grab them and they just stop listening. But they'll keep listening to this one. I don't know what to say to that, because it's sort of like, are you listening because out of pity or what? I don't know. But I do want to thank again the Patreon supporters that have made suggestions and given feedback, and everybody that's given feedback so far. Because I know that even though this is 77 episodes into my podcasting career, quote unquote, and tongue in cheek, by the way, that you don't really get good until you hit that 100 episode, because you know what you're doing, you get your confidence up and things like that. But the Podsocks guys they've been doing podcasts like week in, week out, and they've got different jobs and they do different things, but they come together and put out a fairly decent podcast, and they do their research on the fly. So they'll talk about different things, and they discuss different things, different ideas, and where they come from, and where they think certain things are real, and then they look things up and say, oh yeah, okay, well, this is what the reality of it really is. They can make up their own minds and do things like that. But one of them actually showed me on Twitter that they had subscribed to this podcast. So that's little things like that. And I don't know whether they still listen or not. So do send me a buzz on Twitter if you are, and let me know what's going on. I know that this is quite a lot to take in, and I'm running out of steam, really. There's a whole heap of stuff that I wanted to talk about, and they will come up in future episodes. But I wanted to keep politics and stuff like that out of this podcast if I can, because it's counterintuitive. Basically, people are just listening to me drone on and on and on. And yeah, hopefully that helps people sleep or relax or do whatever it is. And I don't even have the code word yet. And I think I will call the code word compassion. It's COMPASSION. And I think people should have compassion for themselves and for other people, and extend that out to animals and other things too. Speaking of compassion, I'd like to thank David Miller, who is now a Facebook friend, but a while back he sent me a message And because the podcast episodes were like 3 months apart and it was advertised as a weekly show, and I was just going through a real rough patch, and he basically said, well, where are the episodes? And I think Adam Kochi did the same thing as well. And it just spurred me on to be able to create again and sit and just know that there are actually real people listening to this, because I'm not an egotistical person. I'm not a narcissistic person. So when people actually sit and enjoy something, it's fantastic. And I do appreciate every little comment that you get. When you hear other podcasters talking about either Patreon support or leaving a review in iTunes if people can't afford to contribute to Patreon and things like that. I don't know how much that actually goes to supporting podcasters and things like that, like financially, and with the iTunes, with the iTunes ratings and reviews and things, whether that increases your chances of being seen or increases your download numbers. But what it does do is give a boost to the morale and the motivation of a podcaster, because for the last, say, 40 minutes or so, I've been talking to myself, hopefully thinking that people will download this and enjoy it and get the relaxation that they need out of it. And I haven't been focusing on a lot of that stuff because, once again, I'm still trying to get back into the saddle. And if the longer you leave it, the worse it gets. And very often it's just a matter of sitting down and pressing record and not hitting pause, not hitting stop, not editing, and until the end, right? And what I've done is I've stopped 3 or 4 times, and I've just got a notification. I turned everything off, all my notifications off, except for, I want to thank my uncle, because he sent me an iPad Pro, which allowed me to actually type stuff up at work. So while I'm in transit, on the bus or on the train or during a lunch break, I can actually sit and brainstorm and just type things on the fly. So that's been a great help. Thank you, Uncle Lee. And I also wanted to say thank you to, actually, no, not a thank you. I wanted to, if you've got the Find My Friends app, and I know a lot of people don't like sharing their personal locations because people are paranoid, or they've either got stalkers or whatever the reason is, right? I personally don't care. I think people can pretty much find out where I live if they wanted to. I've had my home egged a couple of times. But if you do have that app on, and you are with iPhones and the iPads and things like that, send a message to Shane_Lockwood at hotmail.com. That's SHANE_LOCKWOOD at HOTMAIL.com, and I will follow you back, because I just wanted to see the app actually working. It's not about wanting to know where people are or anything like that. It's just wanting to know, okay, it does do like a pinpoint map of where people are. And I also wanted to know the range of it. So if your friends are, like within a few kilometers, or do you have to be within 50 meters, or will it show up people on the other side of the country, or in anywhere overseas? I don't know. I'd love to find out the range of it. I might have to do a bit more research, but that's something for another time. Thank you once again for everybody that has contributed to the show, whether financially or just in moral support. It all adds up. All the thumbs up, clicking like, and all that sort of stuff helps me to know that you've enjoyed what I've produced. and I can continue to produce more content, and there will be a lot more content. Thank you once again, and I hope that you take today and the rest of the today and the rest of the week easy like a Sunday morn. I haven't even talked about why I called the show that. Anyway, I'll talk about that at some other point in the future. I hope you do have a great rest of the week, and I will catch you next time. Bye for now.